Don't touch that one. Not allowed that one. No. No, we're trying to make a video and you're coming in here stealing all the pieces of wood. I know. This week we go back to basics with one of the key core fundamental life skills everybody should know how to do. Some of the keen-eyed amongst you may spot that we have not one, but two little fox reds here today. I have Tilly, my loving Labrador, and we have a new addition just for today's filming, Kunu. So they're going to do their very best to disrupt the shot wherever possible. We're just going to roll with the punches because that's what we do best here. Today we'll be taking a closer look at one of our core fundamental skill sets, thinking about our food, fire, shelter, water, navigation. Today we're going to take a bit of a snapshot into fire as we learn how to make feather sticks. If you want to see me make any more videos on some of those other said subject matter, be vocal in the comments box below. As always, hit the subscribe button. It massively helps us to keep this thing going and moving forward. And I look forward to reading those comments as time goes on. Think about the rest of them: food, fire, shelter, water, navigation. I will be making more videos as time goes on these basic fundamental skills, but I need your input. I need you to tell me what you'd like to see next, and I'm going to try and make that happen. We have a long list in the pipeline of stuff that people have commented on and vocalized that they want to see, and I want to bring that to you at home in the very best way that I possibly can, but we need to do this together. So let's get into it. We're talking about feather sticks. The art of making feather sticks is a time-tested skill set the world over. If you're lucky and fortunate enough to get access to timber with a straight grain, whether it's breaking up pallets, whether it's offcuts from building an off-grid cabin or other such DIY projects, or whether it's finding and sourcing timber out in the wild, obviously that's going to be cylindrical from in the wider woodland, it doesn't matter. So I've just nabbed a selection of pieces I split as we were getting set up. And what I'm essentially looking for is nice straight grained pieces of timber which are not free, so no little side branches or anything trying to come through there, and not really any sort of obstructions for the knife to glide over and do what it's supposed to, which is essentially increase the surface mass area of this stick, enabling me to hold a lighter at one end and for this to go up like a tinder bundle, and yet still attached I have the duality of having kindling. So it's a two-part deal. Same thing applies for this, apart from it's going to need a little bit of processing. I'm probably going to need to split this down in half and then batten through it to give myself either quarters or eighths. Well, we'll see how far we go with it. We'll try quarters on a piece of diameter like this, which is about inch and a half max. These are going to be absolutely ideal. I will also point out that this piece here, as it's been harvested, is in fact dry. This was dead standing wood. There's no point, guys, going out there and trying to do this with green wood. It's just not going to work in the same way. So first up, I'm going to prepare a cylindrical piece of timber so that we have a like for like starting point. I'm going to take my knife out, pass it to my left and less dexterous hand, simply to hold it in position over the belly, the first inch coming out the blade, and then I'm going to take my other piece of timber or my other piece of wood somewhere up near the top and strike down hard on the spine of my knife, driving it through. If I've gone nice and close to the handle here, I'll have plenty of knife to strike thereafter and continue the split. Oh, now this particular piece of timber is so rot and so old, in fact, I'm going to have to go at it from the other end because that has just come off. Hopefully we'll get the split finished here. Oh, not quite. The reality is when you're out in the woods and you're working with cylindrical timber, there is no guarantee it's going to break in those nice straight lines. You can see the amount of fungal attack and decay and dysfunction inside here, all those tannins and those colours, as this piece of wood has been at literal war with the fungus that's inside it. We'll try again with this one, see how we get on. And for this, I'm just going to make a hammer out of anything I've got to hand in the camp. same thing happening again. And as we can see here, this is from the same piece of rotted timber. So I've ended up with the same result. It's fractured in a number of different ways due to the weaknesses created by the fungus. Not helpful or conducive for making feather sticks. But I can still use it for making as firewood once the fire gets going. So I've just gone and quickly grabbed another piece out of the undergrowth and jammed my knuckle up at the same time. Always the way when you're on camera. And so this time I'm going to try and batten through this piece of hawthorn and see how we get on. Okay, a much straighter break. So with this in mind, as a bushcraft school, and as it's about teaching students to hone the techniques and get the very best out of them, rather than force them to go through this process whilst it is demonstrated and ask them to only be able to really have a go on one corner, we tend to use offcuts from industry, straight grained machine timber, where you have 4 edges to have a go at and to learn, make mistakes, fail. Always remember, fail, first attempt in learning. The way this works, and I'm looking for a nice clean corner, is for me to take my knife in my most dexterous hand and place it across my opposite knee. The spine is touching the soft part of my knee. My hand is coming underneath the piece of timber, with the thumb in the thumbs up position allows me to get even further back and more purchase on the blade itself, on the very edge. So the knife itself I'm using today is a Bushcraft knife. It has a Scandi or Scandinavian grind. That's a flat ground bevel. This is probably optimal for this kind of task and most generalized tasks in the outdoors. Irrespective of that, as long as you have a good, clean, sharp knife, there's no reason you shouldn't be able to master this. And I'm going to bring the piece of work up and underneath and align it with the bevel. I'm then going to very gently begin to pull. As I'm pulling, I'm not trying to dive in too deeply, and I'm aiming to stop about 1 inch from the end. As you can see, there's a little curl. Now what's happened is I've taken off that 90 and I've created almost 2 other edges that I'm now going to try and work on. So I'm going to roll the piece of wood over slightly, I'm over accentuating this, and I'm going to pick up the next one. And I'm going to stop in a similar place. I'm going to go back, roll it over the other way, pick up that corner and stop in a similar place. Now what should start happening is you will find that there is a particular angle of the dangle which you like to work with said knife and said piece of timber. You might find occasionally that the pieces of wood don't come off in the way that you want them to, and they come off in a very straight lifting fashion. My top tip for that is try working the other way up. It's something to do with the growth and the alignment in the tree of the grain. If you know the exact science behind it and the geeky stuff, I want to see that in the comments box below. I'd love for this community to be a community who shares information with each other and knowledge. There we go. So what I've got here is a bunch of curls. I've increased the surface mass area of the stick, and I'm pretty confident if I put a lighter to this, okay, I'll be able to get this to go up. So interestingly, this one was throwing up different curls. Sometimes it's to do with the angle of the blade, and sometimes it's to do with the moisture content inside the stick. So I'm working on the other side of this thing, and you can see that it's curling up, whereas on this side I was getting much more of a sort of a, and you can encourage them round a little bit, but it's just, I find it interesting, all these different variables, and they're just things you've got to work with. Ultimately, it's to start a fire. Okay, so I'm going to need some sort of a backstop for our fire. I'll just use this, today's backstop. So the first of today's book plugs. If you've read Rewild Your Mind, you'll know that whenever I'm setting out a fire, I'm always going to make a raft of timber. So I'm up off the floor and away from that invisible moisture layer that even on a relatively dry day like this is still prevalent on the forest floor. In today's shoot schedule, this is the first of today's videos, and I don't know about Gareth, but I need a coffee. So let's hurry up and make this. We're going to use the crisscross fire method out of the 4 fundamental fire lays, and then we're going to get our coffee on and we'll go from there. So here we are, it's the 21st century. We should all really be carrying a lighter, you can't afford not to. I'm just going to use that to now get the party started. Wind dependent. Let that little flame start to pull its way up through my feather sticks. From here, I'm just looking to make a game of Jenga. And I can already smell some gorgeous pine resin smells coming out of this as I make my little game of Jenga. So the reason I'm going for the crisscross fire lay is it provides the optimal amounts of air space to fuel residing in that heat or height and creating that thermal column. Go back to basics and try and remember your fire triangle. Okay, we've got oxygen, we've got fuel, some sort of a spark or ignition source, and together they will almost always create heat or height. That H at the top there, that is your fire triangle. As always guys, top tip, handle facing the wind. I will be donning a leather glove to pick this back up. So now the water's on and going. I've got the all important safety glove out. Today's cameraman has brought us some Alabaster Coffee Roasting and Tea Company. Okay, so I think this has come from our friends across the pond in America. I think it's going to taste good. I'm sure it's going to taste good. But thank you, Alabaster. We're going to enjoy this. The style of coffee we're going to be making is in the form of a coffee bag. I say that as the water is boiling out of control. Let's just grab this off. As I was saying, today we're going to be using a coffee bag. This particular style or format of getting your coffee in the great outdoors, I think is optimal, given that you could go ahead and grind your own beans, or you could go ahead and take great big bags of pre-ground stuff out there. The bag has the versatility. Whichever brand you go with around the world is up to you, but for someone who spends every day of their life in the great outdoors working and living, it's all about the coffee bag. In the absence of my racing spoon, yes, I've left it at home, I'm going to use the end of one of my new lovely feather sticks. After a tricky start to this morning, Gareth and I have got a day ahead of filming. So that was Feathersticks. I'm going to go drink this coffee and I'll see you again in the next couple of weeks.